Hi everybody, it's Rick Walton. I'm back in my garden and I'm back in dodgy shades. Sorry about that. And I know there's kind of very contrasty light going on here, but friends, take it as seriously as you want. Yeah, I'm not too fussed about that stuff. I'm going to be up against, I've just noticed, dogs, a tractor circling the field over there, 50 yards. So yeah, it ain't the BBC, all right? But look, I'm back on a book mission on this one, which some of you will be familiar with. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Fabulous, kind of poignant title, and it is all that. An Indian History of the American West. Again, titles are important. There's lots of stuff in that title that I'm only beginning to think about myself. Written by a guy called D. Brown, importantly in 1970. It kind of does feel dated in a way, but why wouldn't it? So, as always, I've got some notes, some which I'll read, some I'll just make stuff up, okay? But it's part of this thing of saying to people, I'm interested, I'm not an expert, I'd be really happy for you to throw back your own comments, or better still, do something better yourself. This ain't about me, it's about getting people to read books, okay? Right, so, what is this book all about? It's a labour of love, certainly. It's in some respects quietish, sorry, that's the tractor, but others very angry, understandably, pro-Indian polemic, and it details the evil, the morally repugnant removal of native peoples and their extermination, actually, let's face it, in many cases. So, yes, of course, there is a rage burning, kind of, well, it's similar, so it comes up and down, as it will probably, yeah, with the stories. But crucially, it seeks to tell the stories from the Indian side, and where possible, through their voices. There are lots of quotes from, members of various Indian races, tribes, gangs. All those words are used. We'll maybe come to that. So, whilst following these stories, it does not pretend to be neutral. And why would it? The writer, D. Brown, as I am, is appalled at the general contempt from everybody, US authorities, settlers, interesting word, army, traders, and all those who were invested in their different ways, in any way, in progress, again, in inverted commas, for Christ's sakes, in opening up what they thought of as wild country, the lands of the Indians. So yeah, the writer is appalled at the contempt for the Indians on every level. He's making the case, basically, these people, the white people, let's be blunt, almost exclusively, have no respect, not just for the Indian peoples, and I'm going to come to terminology in a minute if you're wondering, but for their land, their cultural, enormous cultural habits, the value of all those. It meant nothing, right? Worse than that. The real evil, and he's opposing it. Simple as that. On this thing, of nomenclature, Indians, I'm going to say Indians. This book was written in 1970, published in the UK in 71, I believe. So it kind of predates some of the debates, the advancements, actually, let's call them that, around sensitivity towards calling people what they deserve to be called, or more importantly, well, not more importantly, but crucially, what they are comfortable with. 1970, so I can't think of him, Brown, saying anything other than Indians or Indian gangs, racist tribes, all arguably in 2020, spurious, maybe not, but whatever. Okay, it's a product of its time, and for me, I'm absolutely at ease with that. You know, it's only in what the last X years, I'm not an expert on this, that we begin to really unpick or discuss whether terms like Aboriginal, First Nation, or Indigenous are better or more dignified or appropriate. I think that's really important territory, and I am probably going to traduce it at some level in this little warble, but just to note that this book predates most of that stuff. I think it contributes to most of that stuff, actually. Okay, the book generally. I'm not going to be able to say to you, friends, that I think it's a great work of art. I don't. I think some of the writing is relatively ordinary, relatively pedestrian. Brown, I think, was a journalist amongst many other things, and it doesn't feel like the work of a great creative writer. However, all of that may be irrelevant, but I think I'll just throw it in there. It's like a 7 out of 10 in terms of writerly stuff, painterly stuff, rather than a 9 or 10 out of 10. I think that's my instinctive reaction to it. However, it's a massively important social document. It's a bold and a really necessary one at any time, but certainly in 1970, when, as I say, that lurch into progressive, politically correct, modern thinking about race and recognition was barely started, right? So, yeah, context, as is everything. In terms of what he's actually saying in the book, it's stories of that are a testament to many things, but amongst which is the writer's love, and it is that, and respect, and it is that, for Red Cloud, Sitting Bull, Geronimo, Standing Bear, etc., etc., etc. And the book needs to and does register, not just as a kind of worthy memorial to those. They were all gentlemen, actually, weren't they, that I mentioned. Again, maybe that's an interesting subplot to this. But also, as I say, it's a powerful social document. It's meant to be that, and I see it in a way the line towards progress and understanding. And I'm saying that because some of you will know that I've been on a bit of a race theme. I've fallen into that accidentally, but now I'm trying to commit something genuine and honest about all that stuff, and it sits somewhere in the line of books, works of art, etc., etc., that I've been ploughing through. Go back and have a look if you can bear it to some of the other things I've done. So, at that trashy level, marks out of 10, 7, 8. I don't think I would go beyond that in terms of the writerliness, okay? In terms of other things which may really be more significant, 12 out of 10, okay? Because it's of its time, and my own formative experiences, to use a fabulous cliche, were kind of that time, 1970-ish. The imagery and the names of those great chiefs feel really close, and I'm kind of fascinated by that in a way. I know that the movies that I drew in as a kid and a child, and the imagery around much of this stuff is probably pretty kind of poisonous. It's certainly very one-dimensional, and it certainly traduces the greatness and the richness, most of it, of Indian culture. I'm aware of that, and that's kind of striking, but again, we're bouncing to and from that era, 1970 odd, and now, when things feel fairly different, when it feels like the fact of me playing cowboys and Indians, cowpokes and indie bugs, even with what we sometimes called it, interestingly, or not. But I did that stuff as a young kid. Reflecting on that, kind of, there's a pretty sharp contrast with that and any sort of politically correct anthropologically sound reflections. And yet, as I say, not I'm not just talking about my own experience here. We have to pitch this. We're right to pitch this as a valuable contributor to historical and contemporary discussion around race, because it is around race, right? And prejudice, power, all those things inevitably, interminably interlinked. So yeah, there's lots of very rich territory there that I probably haven't got time to go through. In a way, it'd be too indulgent anyway about my own experiences. But the point I'm making, I hope, is something to do with how rich or otherwise our memories are around Indians, in particular, because of the imagery that we've soaked in through our lives and maybe continue to. So, all that. In kind of conclusion, I think it is deeply poignant, extremely enraging, wonderfully loyal and revealing of the Indian stories. It's detailing stuff that we haven't heard, probably because the victor, us white geezers in particular, own history right. So many of these stories haven't been told, certainly not in this way, in 1970, still not now in many ways. It details the theft, the evil, the prejudice that the indigenous tribes suffered. Brown is marking out those trails and the trials and the impression and even the extinction of these people. And he views them as overwhelmingly noble. Fabulous word, but that's a word that is in there. Has got different resonances again now. Overall, it strikes me as impossible not to feel a degree of shame. Again, this is me centering, which is, again, I know, flawed, deeply flawed, but as a white person, I do feel a profound sense of shame and anger reading this book, and guilt reading this book, as well as more wonderful, happier, more uplifting realizations about the culture that is, thank God, respected throughout this book. But it's about racism, is it not? Read it, you will find that, I think, that it's that disturbingly common thread throughout history is there. And in conclusion, my own reading recently has been about that stuff. So it's been tough, it's been challenging, but I am hoping that my own re-education will enable me to be a better ally, to have a fuller understanding of all these issues, because we've got to find a way of sorting out this prejudice thing, right? We just have to do that. Anyway, read the book, read this book, please. Bury My Heart, Wounded Knee, an Indian history of the American West. Thank you, people.